We're live, guys. We're here. Hail, the Celts are here. No timers this week, guys. We're a few minutes behind, but we've all managed to get together. And, in the last 2 weeks since the four of us were together for the Sorare CSC, having a look at all things Celtic under that microscope of everything Sorare, we are now in a position of having a new manager. And the second era of Brendan Rodgers has begun. And it's mixed emotions across most Celtic fans that I see across the interwebs here, there, and everywhere. Some people are so firmly entrenched in what's went by and won't let water run under the bridge, and some other people are quite quick to do so. So, welcome, guys. Good to see you all. And yeah, thoughts and feelings, I guess, are order of the day to get started.
Good to see you. I think it's a good move. I think, a lot of people were obviously feeling negative from the last time. The general feeling that I can get from fans is that it's kind of already been fast-tracked to forgiveness. I think as soon as season starts and we get some wins under our belt, you probably see a lot of people instantly forgetting that. I think it's the biggest priority is actually success on the pitch. So yeah, I think that'll quickly be forgotten. Yeah, I mean, I just think at the end of the day, that's what you're judged on ultimately. You can have a go, but 7 trophies out of 7. Granted we didn't do well in Europe. I think that's the big thing, that we spoke about previously on the show. That I think certainly Sean and I most concerned about progression in Europe. Rodgers didn't do so great before. I mean, I remember some real doings that we took in Europe, but I think domestically we were far more emphatic. I remember really comfortable domestic titles and cup runs. So, I think I'd like to see him be a little bit more adventurous, and probably that's part of the reason why he'd left in it originally, because obviously he was promised certain things, or certainly not allowed to go and sign some of the players that he'd wanted, like Castagni and such like. So yeah, I mean, I'm generally happy about the appointment. I think there's also that element where it's like he's got that out of his system. Like, there's a good amount of time he's spent there now, so like I don't think he'll be in any hurry to jump back down south to another job. So yeah, good appointment.
Yeah, don't speak too soon in that, yeah, I think he was the best man for the job. I think we were having a quick chat about this before, Quinny, and like obviously if you look at his CV's better than Ange's CV when he came to us. I know that's not everything, but I think after Ange's went and how quickly it's happened, I think we've kind of got some of those thoughts about the chest beating and he's one of us and all that. I think that's kind of went out of my system quite quickly. Hope Tottenham get hammered. But yeah, I mean, I think the difference this time will be we've got a good budget. I think we're in a good financial position. So thinking back to what happened before, all the different sort of transfer sagas, I think, I was in the last year his deal and there was money came in and Rodgers wanted to keep him and we could have got money for him, but we ended up winning all the sort of domestic trophies, and yeah, I think there was some friction there in terms of transfer policy and stuff as well. Like, I wanted guys like Castagni wanted to move the club forward and pay 7 or 8 million for Castagni, and I think Lowell or the club said no, that's too high in terms of wages and things. Then you look at the team at the end that was doing pretty poor, but no offence to them, but you guys like Jeremy Toljan and guys of that calibre, and he's taking over a much better squad at the moment. I think it's a good squad. So I think what we need to do is go out and spend a good amount of money on 1 or 2 players and add to the quality. We don't really need depth. I think we need to try and keep most of those guys together and add in 1 or 2 guys that suit his style. But I think it's the right appointment. Like, people will get over what's happened before. Like, they we've just got to move on.
Yeah. I think success on the pitch is going to come because we've got the most money. So we'll win everything domestically. I know we can pretend that there's going to be a big challenge, but if Brendan Rodgers even remotely allocates any of that resource properly, so we're going to win domestically. So that's great. But yeah, it's got to be Europe. I was a bit disappointed it was a 3-year deal. It's not very long term. Obviously, the Celtic custodians, the hierarchy, had leaked to the press that it was long term. I don't think 3 years is very long term. So we could be in the same position again in 2 years' time when Rodgers leaves again, if they don't give him what he wants. But do you know what? I think Rodgers, a very good thing about him is that he changed his approach after Celtic, after Red Bull Salzburg and Marco Rose schooled him. He changed his approach in the Premier League, and he kind of was a bit less focused on possession and started to look at those dangerous transitions, and he did really well at Leicester for a couple of seasons. 5th and 5th was, outstanding, and had Leicester playing a really good competitive style, very different from his Swansea, Liverpool, Celtic stuff, which was more possession focused. So I think that's the biggest positive for me, is I think he's learned his lesson and where the biggest risks are when you play high quality teams. And in Europe, we will be playing high quality teams. In Scotland, we will be playing garbage. So that's the problem that we have to deal with. And I'd love that not to be the case, but the step up is just so big when we play in Europe. Dealing with smart brains, smart players, smart clubs that just don't waste their money. So he is the right man for the job, weirdly, and also the psychology of an enemy coming back to prove himself. He'll want to prove himself and win back the trust of the board and the fans, and that's a good thing. As counterintuitive as that is.
I thought that was a really interesting detail that came out of it as well, because it got officially announced on like the Monday or whatever it was, the Sunday night into the Monday, and like the Friday, Saturday, the main rumours that were going around was Brendan's got a 5-year plan. Brendan's only going to do it if we can march on Europe, and that was all the jazz. And then when it does come out, it's like a 3-year deal. It's like, yeah, I wonder, what was all that 5-year chat about, but it's all got to be centered around that top end of the game. And hearing that come out, that whole 5-year plan stuff, and the murmurings we've had from Celtic and Rodgers' feelings and stuff that they want leaked out for us all to kind of chew over, it has been around that top end competition. And if that's where all the focus is, then I'll forgive and forget really quickly, because that's all I've ever wanted from, if we wound back the clock to when Rodgers came in, that's what you thought where we're getting with Rodgers is, yes, this is a guy that is going to take us to the level that we should be at. And that's why it was so sore when he left, because it's like, if he's not going to do it, then who is? And then we had that kind of, that fortune cookie called Ange Postecoglou come in and kind of get us back on our toes. But now that he's back, if that's the way we're going to be pushing on, then yeah, I'm forgiving and forgetting it, no problem at all.
Yeah. I mean, he was naive in Europe, Rodgers, really, wasn't he? I mean, we tried to go toe-to-toe with some top teams and got absolutely smashed. I think I would say with Ange is that I don't think I was ever even optimistic about. I mean, some of the performances in Europe were pretty dire. I was never even seduced by the possibility that we were going to do well under Ange in Europe, despite playing really well in the SPL and domestic cups. Like I just go back to the Leverkusen games, just particularly the one away, and Florian Wirtz, one of your favourites in the shirt behind you, Quinny, just made us look really ordinary. And I just think the defensive play, it felt like we were miles and miles off it. Maybe in Rodgers' defence, we played better quality teams than Man City and PSG. But yeah, I just think I think he's got a better team. He's inherited a much better Celtic team than the first time round, in my opinion. And I think that he's equally got as poor a Rangers team. I've seen some other commentators, including, I believe, Tom English, talking about how this is a better Rangers team. I'm not so sure it is. I remember that Joey Barton and Kranjčar and all the rest of those guys getting built up is, going to cause all sorts of damage, and that never materialised. Also, the boy that they've signed, Sam Lammers. I've watched, probably one of the only people in Scotland who watched a lot of Sampdoria, and I can assure you that Sam Lammers is not a top player. He's certainly will score goals in the SPL, but he's not a prolific goal scorer. So, their signings are not inspiring, I would say, so far at Rangers. So I would tend to agree with Sean, which is that unless Rangers do something mental with their investment, this is going to be a fairly straightforward formality domestically for us. So it really comes down to being able to hold on to the good quality players, the Hatatis, Kyogo. I can't see any chance of Carter-Vickers leaving. He seems fairly locked in. Could be like, say, your Abadas, Maedas, those guys. I would like to see as many of them stay as possible, and then, like you said, McBride, build on that with some bigger name signings that can actually do it in Europe.
Yeah, I wouldn't focus too much on Rangers, to be honest. Like, I think the difference is obviously when Rodgers left before it was mid-season, so there's still a sore point for me there. Like, that's still in my mind and all that sort of stuff. I'm definitely not as excited as I was the last time where he came in, because I thought we were getting a real sort of top manager, somebody who's high caliber, and we are again. And obviously, if we get past what happened when he left, then he was really successful as well. But I think for our point of view in terms of Celtic, focusing on that, we've got a nice profile of players, age, contracts, etc. We're not in a situation where our best players are out of contract next year. We're not in a situation where if somebody comes in and offers 20, 25 million or whatever, we can't give that back to the manager to spend on other players and things. We're in the Champions League. We know the financial position. We can budget. We're not in a position going through qualifiers and stuff. So I think the focus got to be on just, even whether you think Rodgers the right, wrong appointment, whether you're harbouring some of the stuff before, just get behind them. Some people will say what they say on social media. Some people will be deleting what they've been saying on social media for a couple of years. But now they get to the stadium and get behind the team, enjoy the European nights. I can't wait to see the Champions League draw. I want to go away and see an away game or something, go and get quite bevied, like I did in Madrid.
Yep.
But that's what we've. No, I just went to Madrid to get bevied. But I mean that's what we should be looking forward to. So the Ange thing was a shock because it was so quick, and it was like we won the treble, and it seemed, for me, it overshadowed it. I was sitting watching that game, looking at his face, thinking he's away. You could kind of tell. So it was a wee bit of a damp squib, I think, which is weird for winning a treble, but he's left us in a really good position.
Yeah, but on a Sorare perspective, it should mean that our little group of players are value, shouldn't it? That's what it's all about.
One thing I would say is Brendan's definitely not as, and not that the team really rotated that much under Ange, but it did feel constantly like we're always second guessing who was going to play every week. But I feel with Brendan Rodgers, number one, you'll get to know the best 11 probably after a game or two of who's going to play most weeks. Maybe we still get that triple sub thing happening, because it just feels like a 5-sub modern football kind of move that teams kind of do. So maybe that still happens, but I do think that we'll probably get a bit more certainty. There's a few interesting chats coming on in terms of who we could be selling. Now, in terms of who we could be selling, I think this is probably one of the first summers in particular where selling guys is actually mad positive, because we've got kind of too many players for a lot of these positions for somebody like Brendan, who will probably just stick with like a best 11 We still want a really strong bench. A few of you guys have mentioned it already. The depth, we don't really need depth in the squad. We need quality. We need proper top-end pieces to now come in and enhance, the best team possible.
Yeah.
You've mentioned Maeda. One I want to throw at you, because there's a good comment that came in here, is Carter-Vickers. Now, what I want to say about Vickers, right, is obviously we've bought him from Tottenham, and if memory serves me right, they've got a buyback on him. Homegrown status. Ange knows the actual extent of his injury and his surgery. It's probably the only people that wouldn't be put off by buying him in this summer. I thought we were kind of safe this summer because he was injured, and had the surgery and stuff, and most teams will probably let him come back before they would look at him. But when you're thinking about who might leave the squad, is Carter-Vickers somebody we should worry about?
I remember, unless something seismically changed, in terms of their view on Carter-Vickers, I know that Ange rates him, but Tottenham were pretty emphatic in not wanting him. Previously, unless they've went entire 180 on that purely because of Ange. But I know they're certainly looking at other centre backs right now, and making moves there. I think Davies is, if not committed, ready to commit as well. I'd be surprised at CCV. I think Ange, not being disrespectful to CCV, but I would think that Ange would be looking for a level above him.
Yeah, it has to be. Has to be. You're going into a different. This is the serious stuff now for Ange. Like he's putting his new team up against
His
the
giblets.
best, the absolute best, and you're just going to need players that can resist presses, that can be composed, that their mobility is just excellent. They can just progress the ball, just carrying it up the field. And I don't know if Carter-Vickers could do that in the English Premier League to the level that's going to be required of a pretty extreme system that Ange Postecoglou plays. So he's going to have to probably go out and get the very, very best. And Carter-Vickers is obviously on Sorare for us, an absolute beast. Just doesn't ever lose a duel. It's remarkable. But if you consider that Virgil van Dijk in his prime was dueling even higher than Carl Starfelt and Carter-Vickers in the English Premier League, you just start seeing the levels to, the elite guys, and the elite guys like Van Dijk in his prime and others. We all could see that Van Dijk was obviously world class when he played for Celtic, and he had to do that stupid audition for Southampton for the rest of the clubs to trust that he was actually going to be fantastic. But I would say Carter-Vickers is off of that. He's good. He's a good player for us. He's been great last couple of seasons, but I can't really see Ange taking him, because I just don't think he's going to reach the heights that Ange is going to really need somebody to reach.
Yeah, Quinny, you put up the Sorare data stuff there. I think the interesting thing you can do in that is you can filter specific competitions. And I think when Celtic came on, I don't know if it'll go back this far, but certainly if you filtered out the European games and you just filtered to the SPL games, Vickers' scores were absolutely insane. But I think that kind of backs up your point a bit, Sean, right? So obviously we really like these guys, and we really think these guys are exceptional and all that sort of stuff. But equally, the team that we've got, we did get humbled a wee bit in Europe, I would have said as well. And I know we did have, I think Starfelt Vickers maybe missed some of those games as well. Starfelt particularly had a few injuries, but from the point of view of Vickers, I think it depends on what type of budget Ange's got. If he's got the budget to go and spend 40 million in David Raya and bring in guys who are top class, then he's not going to be looking at guys like Carter-Vickers. But I wasn't aware of the buyback type situation, and obviously the risk could be if he doesn't get his first targets, if he doesn't get his guys that he really would want, will he revert back to somebody he knows? So I think there's still some risk. I wouldn't completely rule it out, but I agree with you guys. I think that he'll be aiming a bit higher than that, at least initially.
Yeah, and the speed in which they went after David Raya was pretty telling, wasn't it? The kind of goalkeeper that Ange actually wants to have. And all of a sudden he's got the ability to just go after that goalkeeper and, He's not really shackled by anything. He's got the money, 40, 50 million, whatever it's going to be, straight in for Raya, which makes a lot of sense. So it's going to be a lot of fun watching Tottenham, actually, because they've obviously got their infrastructure is obviously excellent. The one problem that Tottenham have is the same problem that Celtic have, which is we have directors and corporate people making football decisions, and they don't have the qualifications. They just have the power, and that's a big problem, and it's a problem at Tottenham. And I would say that Daniel Levy is probably the sole reason why that club has underperformed for the amount of years it has. He's acting like a sporting director, and he doesn't have the talent for it. He's got the money to just put himself in that position and dominate the admin of that club. A little bit like Dr. Robotnik at Celtic can just dominate, put his pals in, put his sons in, and it's just like, well, that's no helping. We need talented problem solvers with vision that want to just see Celtic doing brilliantly, not you enriching your Tory pals while Celtic also do well. Because everyone wins, you get all the money, and we just go, oh, another title, another billionth title. No, let's go to a European final. How about that? Because that's Celtic Football Club, not just winning title after title after title against a bunch of foes that are not worthy even. We shouldn't even be competing against them, really. It's just a weird setup that we're stuck in that league, having to play against them. I would love for Aberdeen and all that. They actually look quite good this season. They made some really good signings. Hearts, Hibs, all these dormant big clubs just to actually get their act together and come challenges and make it a really competitive league. But until then, I don't know. I'm getting a bit tired of just clapping along. Another domestic treble. Yeah, let's get something in Europe. We need it. I think we need it as a football club. I feel it's the one missing thing we've had for the last 20 years. It's just not been there. We need apart from Seville, which was heartbreaking, but we need that European status back to be Celtic again. And I would, in the words of Gordon Sowers, I'd love it. I would love it.
See, the thing is, like, when you look at, like, just obviously getting a little flashback there, Quinny, you pulled up the Sorare data scores. It's quite sobering to realise just how horrendous in Europe we were under Ange. And I think sometimes people have a very revisionist view of, how great Ange was. But in those key big matches in Europe, we were horrendous. I mean, there's some real bad ones in there. And I think like that part of it is really key. Last time we spoke about, this underperforming, underachieving Celtic in Europe, I made my point, which I've made on various outlets for many years, about Celtic's income based on the size of the club and even relative to the league and all of that stuff. And we are grossly underachieving. We're in top 10, I believe. We're in the 7th highest match day income in the world for a club, and so I'd seen previously in the comments someone had mentioned we're a small fish in Europe. I mean, I can't emphasize just how much I disagree with that statement. Like, by virtue of the fact that we have got all of that history and we're such a decorated club, first and foremost means that we'll never be a small fish. But secondly, we just attract, such a mad amount of supporters, even despite that, that lack of achievement over a long period. But I think, a similar vibe, which I feel, which is like, yeah, that's great, winning all those trebles and all of that. And, it is nice to beat Rangers and put them in their place. However, there is an element where it's like, yeah, that's great, but come on, next, let's go and actually do something in Europe. And I think, like, I like hearing that point. Like, it actually inspires me more to hear Brendan say, let's get to a final in Europe, than all of that, let's trust the process nonsense. I want tangibles. And yeah, European final, let's do it. I'm up for that. Let's go for that more than, let's build something, some like intangible that really is, it doesn't really mean anything.
Totally. And I think, like, again, it's lost on a lot of people. Sorry, McGawk, I'll let you come in a second. But I think when we're talking about this European success trumping and being the thing over domestic football, I think what's kind of lost in all of that, when, especially as I read in the comments, is, you know, when you've got this sustained dominance domestically, Celtic in our history, as well as other clubs in our situation, give or take, that then culminates in a little bit of success against, you know, your peers, as it were. You know, the big boys in Portugal, the big boys in Holland and France and Germany. You meet them, you beat them. We've done it before. It's what Celtic's always been about for as long as I've been a Celtic fan, is welcome them all to paradise. And it doesn't matter who you think you are. It doesn't matter how much you pay your players. Once you get in here and the whistle blows, you know, it's game on, and we'll go with MD. Doesn't matter who it is. And that's definitely been lost over the last 15 years from a little bit of, you know, the success we've had or not had. And the knockout, see the whole statistic, we've not won a knockout tie and blah, blah, blah. We've won, you know, we've had group games in a lot of those years as well. European football has not been 100% knockout based in about 40 years. You know, there's been group stages forever. So not winning a knockout tie is like half of a picture, you know, and every European campaign has got a woe is me story of a goal, a substitute, an injury, or something. Happens every year, and we're sick and fed up of the club half baking it with this January loans and the last minute deadline transfer, because it's these small stupid things that as soon as they get fixed, a lot of our, like, what all Celtic fans see as possible will quickly change in a couple of seasons, you know, and it feels like we're so close to that happening. It doesn't feel like Carter-Vickers is anyone's take for a man to leave this summer, so fair play on that one. But we're getting a few questions on incomings as well. I'll let McGawk come in, obviously, but yeah, go for it. Sorry.
yeah. No, I mean, like we talk about that obviously in terms of the league, and if we look across the other side of the city, Rangers were in a European final. So the only point I was going to make is I think we're now in a better position than actually Rangers were in, and they've got themselves into a European final. So we should be looking at that and be a wee bit annoyed about our European record, because, like, okay, you know, Sanj cutting his teeth in Europe and all that type of stuff, but we played well enough to beat Shakhtar Donetsk in at least one of those games. We could have maybe at least come third in Europe and still had some European football and said, right, why don't we have a go at going to Europa League final? And instead we finished bottom of the group. So I'm not saying that that's an achievement to finish third in the Champions League, but then I don't think we can keep saying, well, these teams have got more money than us, or this or that. Okay, we're in a league where we don't get as much money from the TV money or whatever, but we have got money now. We've guaranteed Champions League. We've got a good squad. You could play about with that if you want to let somebody go for a big fee and reinvest it, whatever. There's room for manoeuvre there. So now it's time, I think, to start being a bit more ambitious and making Parkhead a fortress again. I used to go to the European games thinking we can beat anybody at Parkhead. Anybody. Whereas was it Shakhtar Donetsk game, and you were like, when we went 1 each, you were like, I don't think we're going to score here.
So in finance, and they always say a narrative has to have the legitimacy of a trend. So, you know, in order to think something and believe that there's some story unfolding, there has to be an identifiable trend where you go, right, this. We can look at that objective and say that's going up or that's going down. Celtic are going down and have been going down for about 15, 16, 17 years. It ain't good enough anymore for us as fans to sit and go, TV money, Saudi, England, excuses. Did the Lisbon Lions make excuses turning up in Lisbon, walking out that day in that heat, playing the best team in the world? Did they stuff? I was in Lisbon a couple of months ago, and it was really emotional just walking onto that pitch and going, oh my God, 11 guys 20 miles away from each other, turned up and schooled the best team anyone had ever saw at that point in terms of defensively. That's the attitude. None of these excuses anymore. We're sick and tired of it. We have to just go forward, do something, and let's see the club uptrending again. Let's see us doing the types of business that, you know, because forever it was Red Bull Salzburg can just do what they want. They've got all the money from Red Bull and they've got all the work permits and all that. Well, Salzburg just signed like 3 or 4 of the best young players in Europe, like just like that, like just clockwork, like one in. in order for me to believe that Celtic are going to do something again in Europe, that 18 to 22-year-old has to be the transfer business we're doing, and it has to be a conveyor belt.
Do you know, like, see that point, right? And like, we talk about like the expectation levels. It always astounds me, like, that a lot of our fans get on board with that, like the massaged expectation levels of just managed right down to, oh, we should be settling for this. If you look across Europe and, like, let's say lesser competitive leagues, the bigger clubs in there with the support and history of us, like, let's say similar to us, right? If you can imagine, like, any time they don't have any success in Europe or anything like that, they're going mad. There's like supporters smashing buses and all that, and I'm not suggesting we should do that, incidentally. But what I do think fans should do is be a little bit more concerned and annoyed when we are massively underachieving in Europe and not just accept it. Because, there's someone just mentioned there about the turnover. The turnover's been increasing exponentially for ages. We've been bringing in, yeah, exactly that comment there is absolutely spot on. The turnover has been growing exponentially for a long, long time. I think fans need to be on the pulse, particularly the AGMs, and scrutinising where the money's going, because there's so many occasions where lots of that money is dripping out of the club and it's not going into, areas that are benefiting, recruitment or, even the long-term development of the youth system or anything that's even close to benefiting the club. The other point I think we mentioned before was just about the commercial deals that the club are doing. I know that Sean and I have spoken for a long time about just the poor negotiation of deals with, TV and even merchandise. I mean, even the deals that have been presented to the fans as being huge wins, where, it's widely been commented from some of the larger shirt like your Adidas's and New Balance, that Celtic could have got more. So, like, this is fairly common knowledge that the guys managing our commercial aspects of the club aren't that good, but we just seem to allow them to continue with that. Anyway, I don't want to turn it into an anti-Lawwell and Desmond rant, but I have zero confidence in them long term still, and I think that part of it has to, in some way, remedy for us to fully achieve our goals.
And look at GB Boy's comment here, right? So, different era of players in that era. Great players were abundant back then. They're not there in Scotland now. Show me 11 Scotsmen we can get to compete. Exactly, there's next to none. It's TV money needed. I'm sorry, it's just an excuse. You've just made a big bunch of excuses. Loser. Total loser mentality. We're Celtic Football Club. We find solutions. We go out, we compete.
I think there's so much more around that, but it's a big, like, because football is so different now. Scottish football, grassroots production of football players has only really started to get into gear in the modern era over the last couple of years, if that. We've seen guys leave Celtic for Bayern and lots of other clubs, but over the last 15, 20, 30 years, there's not been any players produced by any club in Scotland. So I think I think that has to get thrown into it as well. Like, I look at every other, sorry mate, but just the last thing I'd say is, like, Belgium don't get TV money. They produce a world-class national team. So do Portugal, so do Holland. And we've got history of producing great players here too. So I think that kind of thing, that's a total.
It's nothing to do with trying to replicate that. It's never going to happen again. That was one of the greatest sporting achievements of all time. But it's about mentality. It's about believing that you have to find ways to compete with the best, even though you don't have the same resources as them. And in the reality of, sport, you have to find these ways of getting an advantage. And I think Celtic have a lot of advantages already, like the stadium, like the fans, like the fact that we've got a way of playing. Celtic have got a footballing identity, but I don't think we've got the same infrastructure. we could, you know, Ajax have 40, 50 years of just producing that type of player to play their way. And I think Celtic can do something similar. And it's all from a good place. We just all want to see us winning again on a European stage. And all the domestic stuff will be incidental. It'll all come as well.
Can I just pick up a couple of points here that just someone had mentioned there about turnover isn't profit? Yeah, I mean, in terms, I don't want to be given lessons here on the finances of Celtic, but if you look at the profit levels in that period as well, they've also grown exponentially. Most of the profit that's been taken from Celtic has been transfer fees out. So lots of, I remember I absolutely agree with that comment. Celtic could commercially be an absolute monster. We should be. We're just mismanaging the funds. We're squandering. We're underselling the brand. And we've got the wrong people in the role. I mean, how has it just turned out that Lawwell's son is just suddenly the best man for the job? Come on. We're not looking far enough for the real talent. We're just looking at our nose and we're not actually investigating. But just to take the point about the 11 Scottish players, I take it people aren't following the Scottish national team at the moment because we are absolutely performing well as a national team. We have a chance tonight to pretty much put ourselves into a chance of qualifying already for the Euro. So I don't accept that as a point. I would say that the Scottish youth, particularly in the last 10 years, I think has drastically improved, particularly with the development of those performance centres. I think the actual quality individually of the youngsters coming through that has been massive. And you look at some of them that are in the national team that have came through that. And I think that'll only get better. Whilst we look at teams like, Hibs, Hearts, your Motherwells and Aberdeens and stuff, and say, as clubs, they're maybe not excelling to be competitive against Celtic. And fair enough, I would absolutely accept that as fair comment. However, you can't suggest that they're not producing players of a high quality. If you look at Max Johnson at Motherwell, he's not getting linked with Diddy teams. I think that's the difference. Like 10 to 20 years ago, Scottish players were going down south and they were going to kind of taking mediocre. Yeah, totally. Now you're seeing they're just we've got like about 4 or 5 left backs and right backs who, if not world class, on a path to being. So I don't buy that.
There's 5 players tonight starting for Scotland that came through Celtic's youth system.
So I think it's I think we've got to look at, yes, I agree, the 90s, the noughties, if you like, were dreadful. The early 2010s were not so great. But there's something that Scottish football's been doing well with youth development in the last 10 years that I think needs to actually be applauded. We're seeing so many of them that have got ability. And let's not forget Ben Summers coming through at Celtic, and Vata, granted Vata's not Scottish, although technically he might still have a chance of squeezing them in there. But Summers is an absolute magician when I've seen him. Is that the Scotland team tonight?
Yeah.
It's pretty much as
Tierney,
expected.
McGregor, Henry, Hickey, and it's pretty good. Porteous has actually been playing well.
Porteous has been brilliant. I remember Sean and me, certainly for a long time ago, saying that Porteous would be a good shout for Celtic, and we were laughed at. Porteous would have been brilliant at Celtic.
Kvaratskhelia, he's the only danger into him up front.
Gilmore next to McGregor is going to be interesting to watch as well.
I'm not sold on Gilmore, but it was good that one game in the Euros.
Good that one game for Chelsea.
I think I'm just biased against him because of his leanings.
So I think the fact that Brendan's in and a lot of the stuff that we've heard so far hopefully points to the fact that maybe the writing is on the wall now and the club is going forward to try and attack. We're walking right into the group stages this year. If we win the league, I'll say if just to say the word. If we win the league this year, we're in the group stages again next year. The board have not had this security since probably 2001. or something like that. Like, it's been a long time since that was firmly the state of play. The bank balance, the turnover, we can argue about how good it is or not. I don't think anyone is really arguing. Needless to say, it's healthy. We've got assets all over the squad. One or two of them probably will go. And I think the main thing, transfer business-wise, in terms of who does go in or out, I think the main thing is, like, it's got to be top-end quality that does come into the team. But is the business we're going to do going to be? Is it going to be really reactive? Do you think we'll just be filling in for whoever we sell, or do you think there's any areas of the pitch that Rodgers will go out and say, "I need a guy to go there"?
Do you know? Can I raise one point first off the bat? Because I think like the players to sell, I think it's been on my head, which is obviously Rodgers' first spell at Celtic. 2 players who were his pet players, and arguably they produced their best performances of their career under Brendan are Mikey Johnson and James Forrest, both clearly way out of the picture with Ange. Yeah, I think there's a chance for them to get back in under Rodgers.
Yeah,
interesting. I think the goalkeeping position, Hart's out of contract at the end of the season. I don't think Hart was that good last season. I mean, Brendan does like to play out from the back as well. So if he's got money, I don't think it'll just be a case of reacting to who goes. Obviously, you'll have to react if there's a big name that leaves. But if you look further forward than that as well, is Maeda a Rodgers type of player? Would he maybe prefer a guy who can beat a man? I really like Maeda, but he does go through spells where he looks as if everything's going to go into rose ed. He tries a lot. He's improving. He's playing for Japan. He's playing for the national team. He had a good World Cup and all that type of stuff. So if Brendan comes in and says, he's not my type of player, I know he works hard, but I want to improve the quality, you could move him on for a good fee and you could bring somebody else in. So it's interesting you mentioned Forrest and Mikey Johnson, because they're different types of players to somebody like Maeda. So I think it's inevitable there'll be a wee bit of a change in the style. Obviously, another guy like throw in Aaron Moy. Obviously, there's been loads of rumours about whether or not he's going to stay on. Looks as if he was injured at the end of the season. After the World Cup, he had a really good spell where he looked as if he was going to cement that position, and then O'Reilly came back. So if Moy's not fit, what happens? Does Turnbull get a wee bit of a chance in there, or do guys like that move on and you increase the quality? No. I know. Well, I don't think so personally. I think it would probably be time for him to move on. But interestingly, we linked to this guy Holm, who's 20, highly rated in Norway on the Golden Boy list. 2.5 million for a 20-year-old, and he's a sort of more of an attacking style midfielder. So it's kind of nice to see a wee bit of a theme in terms of the transfer business. That's obviously somebody Celtic were already looking at and identifying, and they've still moved forward with that, even though they're bringing in obviously a manager. So Brendan will come in and he'll assess things. But I think that I think we've got a really good basis there, and I don't think we'll just be reacting to who's going. I think he'll want to look at that and add in some proper quality. And if he's got money to spend, he will spend it. He was wanting to spend money before, and he didn't really have it. So,
correct me if I'm wrong, but I take it Brendan Rodgers, for the most part of Leicester, did not play with a single striker like a Jamie Vardy up top or Daka, and then he had actually he changed towards the end because I think he was getting a wee bit desperate because their luck was kind of running out. I think they went to like a 4-2-3-1, and that didn't do them any favours. But I'm sure it was like a 4-1-4-1 kind of thing out of possession, and then maybe 4-3-3 in possession, which isn't too dissimilar to what Postecoglou was doing. But I think like a Kyogo up front, I mean, Kyogo and Vardy must be quite similar profiles.
Yeah,
they don't really get involved in the game much, apart from when they're getting put through 1-on-1 or when they're poaching. And if you look at the wingers or the wide midfielders that Rodgers would have had, it was Maddison, Harvey Barnes. Then he had Tielemans as his kind of creative midfielder, and he'd always have an anchor as well. So I would see these as kind of hints as to probably how he's going to set up. He's probably going to maybe go back to that, because I think that was the way he went, more transition focused, and I think he got the 2/5 back to back in the FA Cup, which was pretty remarkable for a club like Leicester. Obviously that's all forgotten now, and he was a complete failure. But there was a lot of flexibility with Rodgers and how he set up. I can remember from memory. And I don't think it's that far away, really. So, yeah, if Kyogo, the likes of Kyogo, I think will slot in perfectly. And if Kyogo is sold, O's there, and O's not bad either. Or Maeda can play through the middle as well, even though it's not very popular.
See, Quinny, I guess a question for you, because you've mentioned quite a lot here about people being sold. Who do you think will be sold, if any?
I think Maeda's already made comments of like, oh, Ange already convinced me I can play at a higher level, and maybe that's what I'll go and do or whatever. So I think Maeda's, like McGawker says, like, he had that World Cup. He's got the profile of doing that job for Japan. He's also just scored in this window, even today, you know. So I could see a bunch of teams in the Bundesliga, a bunch of teams in the Prem definitely say, I will pay, you know, a decent transfer fee for him. And I think that's an easy one, because when you look at, maybe we keep Abada, right? Because if you actually listen to Abada doesn't actually say anything about leaving, and not that they ever do. Football players, they never say they're going to leave, but Abada's pretty convincing, I think, you know. So I wouldn't be surprised if Rodgers wants Abada for a season, because Abada, Forrest, Roberts, they're the type of wingers that he wants out in that wide area, somebody that can take people out in space. So I could see Maeda being an easy casualty on that front. Get a good fee for him. Doesn't really diminish the front line too much. And
send him back to Yokohama then.
Yeah, please.
So I can get some sweet wins on Sorare. Straight back to Yokohama. Who else are you killing off?
Yeah.
That I own. Who else is getting it? Executioner Quinny. Hatate, send him back. Kyogo with my whole Celtic team gone. Gone.
I think Maeda's probably the shakiest one, because I think he's got, similar to Juranovic, he's just got that profile that clubs will be interested in him. The club will be able to get a good fee for him. And he is a Marmite guy. Rodgers might say quite easily, Kyogo could do that job for me. I don't need Maeda, you know, because he's not going to play Maeda and Kyogo and Jota and Abada and whoever else he wants to sign. So there's got to be give somewhere. And I think he's just quite easily the other one. I'm quite happy, and I'm quite convinced. Otherwise, we'll keep everyone we want to keep. I don't think there's anyone else there that, someone too big and too rich is going to come and get him this summer. I don't think anyone's really in that position of being that appealing to other clubs yet.
I think someone in the comments had mentioned, like Stephen was mentioning about Benfica and how well they've done it.
Yes.
Selling players. I think at some point Celtic do need to sell these players and get a good chunk of money and take a nice big sizable profit. And if they've got a good recruitment set up and they trust themselves and believe in themselves, just go and get the next guy. So I think we have to make some big sales this summer, and that's a good thing. You want to sell your players as close to peak value as you possibly can, because we've not really done that. It's not something our Conservative board ever really do. We end up botching the deals and getting less money than we should have done. Like Ayer just went for something pretty cheap, when if we sold him a year earlier, it could have been much better. So I think we need to kind of let go. The people that are in control need to let go and just raise some serious funds, and trust yourselves to go and get 5-6 of the next guys, proper quality that can come in and make us stronger in Europe. And just, you have to take some level of risk, and especially if you want to try and get a wee advantage and a couple of extra percentages in Europe. I think I would be happy selling a couple of the kind of established stars, because I think we could get considerable money for them at this stage.
I think that you're realistically looking. I mean, like I actually personally think the toughest player to replace, based on the toughest two players to replace for me, I think I've said this before, would be Kyogo and Hatate, because Rio's just unbelievable, and his creativity in the midfield is just caused so much damage for us and such a positive influence. I just think he's an incredible high value asset to sell. That, going back to what I've said consistently about the board and the way they manage the club, I could see that being one where they could see an opportunity to maximise a return on him. But probably not to the level that we would think or expect when you look back to the likes of the deals with Edouard or Dembele. But Kyogo's the other. I think those goals and just he's so clinical. I think will be really tough to replace. I think will do a great job. I just think Kyogo's just on fire just now, and I could see day two going. I'm going to be slightly contrarian here and say that I think Maeda would do well under Rodgers purely because he's direct, and I think that if Rodgers get time to work with him, because if you remember when Rodgers came in to Celtic, a lot of fans were making lots of nasty comments about James Forrest and how they would drive him down to wherever club he was linked to down south themselves. While I was, and you can check my tweets, stringently defending him, saying he has a phenomenal future ahead of him at Celtic, and of course he did. Now, I'm not saying that that is going to happen like that with Maeda, but I have a feeling that he is one that will stay and do well under Rodgers personally. But yeah, out with that, I can't think of anyone else obvious that I can see leaving.
No, I think Iwata is going to have a good season. I think I'm excited about seeing him. I think Rodgers can definitely use Iwata. And from a Sorare perspective, Iwata could be an absolute golden card. Because if he's just going to be sitting in front of that midfield where McGregor is on that page that you've just pulled up, Quinny, Iwata is going to be worth an absolute fortune in Sorare because he's just going to hit huge scores. And I think he's going to fit Rodgers' outlook very nicely.
This looks to be the strongest team, if you like, on paper that we had last season, under Ange's era. And just as we're talking about this, I'm thinking, right, okay, if we're to take the strongest team we've got now probably on paper and roll into the Champions League with Brendan Rodgers, if you're Brendan Rodgers and some of the stuff, we've already spoken about the goalkeeper, right? So we're probably all quite convinced this summer we probably actually go and get a goalkeeper. In defence, we're probably all quite married to at this point. Is there room for another defender under Brendan Rodgers? Does he stay with Taylor? Is maybe one of the questions.
I hate to say it, Quinny, but that defence, it gives me, apart from Johnston, I think it's going to be great under Ange. Under Ange, oh my God, sorry, I'm still happy. I think that can be that. See that triangle between the goalkeeper and the two centre backs. I think we could seriously improve that. As much as it domestically, from a Sorare perspective, Starfelt and Carter-Vickers doesn't get any better. But from a scaling up to Europe, I think those positions can be mightily improved upon if ball progression is the thing that Rodgers is going to want to do. If he doesn't want to do that, then sure, that back four will be as good as it was last year. But I think Starfelt in particular, just think we could do better. And I agree with J67X. Kobayashi, let him cook back in Japan. Yes, send him back, let him cook so we can get some value in that card, because I don't think he was a very appropriate signing from Ange at all. Don't think he's really suitable for us.
I could see a slight move in there. I'm playing on the assumption that Hatate leaves, where you could see Iwata again, because if you look at when Brendan came in the last time in that first season, he kind of went with some of the old guard initially, and then started to slowly weed them out, if you like. So I could see if Hatate does go, I could see Iwata with McGregor and O'Reilly in front of him, being a safe starting grid for Brendan. But like you said, Quinny, I could see Taylor. And by the way, I stand to lose if any of these moves happen in Sorare, because I have Taylor. I think we all have pretty much that whole 11. We all have, well, Certainly, most of us have. So, we would stand to lose seeing them go. However, if I'm being honest, I would say the players that could be replaced in there would probably be Hart, Taylor, Starfelt. That would probably be the ones that I would look at straight away to replace. But yeah, nothing. I don't think it'll be anything major, unless there are players that are sold.
Yeah. I do hold that hope, but that maybe O'Reilly and Hatate, Jota, we've not really spoke about. They've not done enough to kick on, to get a big transfer this summer. And the group stages is where all of the clubs and the players, if we keep them all through this summer window, all their energy will be going into that group stage. McBride said it earlier in the stream, but normally this time of year we should be getting excited about the draw and thinking about who could we get and all that good stuff. But up to this point, it's all been manager chat. I can't wait for the press conferences on Friday, so it'll be good to actually see him as a Celtic manager again, and that will kind of make it real, maybe, and that maybe changes things up a little bit. But I can't wait for him to get to work and get the transfer window underway, because it's going to be busy. There probably will have to be a few outgoings. Some other guys we could maybe get into in a bit more detail on the fringe of the squad, but it's going to be a busy one, and it's probably, like we've kind of referenced a few times throughout the show, the club has never been in a better spot on so many dimensions. It is an exciting summer.
Yeah, I think the other thing as well, I know I take the point about Starfelt and Vickers, but I think actually in some of those Champions League games, we never even had the benefit of running them together. Like, start of the season, I think Starfelt did pick up some injuries. So, maybe we're being a wee bit harsh as well, because at the level we're at, once you start moving in guys like maybe Kobayashi, etc., you can see the drop in quality. Again, Gents, actually, I kind of liked him. Nice move for pretty big fee as well. So, maybe we could have kept Gents if he was happy. Maybe he wasn't happy being a backup. So, actually, I think bringing in a centre half's a pretty obvious one. Not whether or not it improves Starfelt and Vickers, but I think we should bring one in. I think midfield, if clubs are not watching Celtic and they don't want to sign Hatate, then they've got shit scouts, haven't they? Excuse my French. I mean, come on. I think the guy is.
That should demonetise this whole thing. You've just lost us all.
See the thing about, we're gonna get. The thing about Starfelt is, like, and again, he's cost a lot of money on that Sorare, so I hope his place is absolutely guaranteed and everything works out. However, taking that invested head off, there he's playing tonight for Sweden, doesn't get a game. The guy is the defender for Verona and ahead of him. So you're looking at the kind of.
No, he's out. I think he's.
He's in. I think he's in Italy.
He's on the beach.
He's just honestly, Mark, earlier on, he's on the beach in Italy. I don't think he even went to that.
He was in.
He played the friendly.
He played the friendly, yeah.
I don't know what he's doing there, because he's definitely.
He's got a teleporter, I've seen pictures too, mate. He's got a teleporter or a flying carpet or something.
So anyway, let's be honest. He's not a starting. He's not a starting player for Sweden. So I think that's a kind of hint for where he's currently at. I'm not saying he can't be, but I think just a little bit of honesty about the level that he's at currently. And I think that I think we could just get a better option in there, personally.
Definitely. Yeah. Maybe if you play so rare and you watch so many games from across the globe, you see so many players that would be great at Celtic, but you don't really know what Brendan Rodgers is going to want to do, because if this was back 3-4 years ago, whenever it was, when he left when he joined the first time, 5-6 years ago, however many years, you knew exactly what he was going to do, because there'd been about 6 seasons before that where he just played the same way, and you're like, right, we're going to get that. But at Leicester, that last season, he was obviously scrambling to try and find different ways of playing just to get them going again, because that their star had kind of faded a bit after those 2 fifths in a row in the FA Cup. So I'm not sure how he's going to approach it, which makes it difficult from a Sorare perspective to try and judge who he might be interested in signing, because all of a sudden, all those Japanese players, all the Korean players, are you looking at them anymore? Because we would sit and look and watch the J-League and the K-League and think, right, who are Celtic going to target here? Who's Celtic going to bring in for this league? Can we really do that anymore? Are Celtic going to keep that link, or is that going to leave with Ange? Is it going to be another focus? So it's going to be quite hard, but I can think of 10 centre-backs off the top of my head that are objectively better than Carl Starfelt, and that's just for watching all these games and looking at their underlying data and all that, and hopefully we can just keep upgrading each position. But it's easier said than done, and obviously it's not easy. We can just go on Sorare and just pick the best guys and put them in our teams, buying and selling cars, but when it comes to the real thing, it's much more complicated.
MarkPatrickRare, I know you said you had to dive off at 7, so if you do have to run anyone, then obviously feel free to. But one thing I wanted to pick up just from what you were saying there, Sean, like Brendan coming into this is a bit of an unknown quantity. In terms of what he wants to build the team like this time, will it be similar to Leicester? Will it be similar to last Celtic team? Will it be something new altogether? But is it going to be? Oh, I thought I was going to actually say he had to go then say bye. I didn't think it was going to cut off there. I'm really sorry if that was me being rude there, by the way. I just wanted to say that, and then if he wanted to go, he could have said, I feel bad now. I hope he sees this later. But it get mentioned earlier, and I kind of want to bring that along with what was kind of mentioned earlier with the blue side of town. I actually think they're doing the best business they've probably done themselves in a couple of seasons. Not that is a great achievement or anything, but they do seem they're ahead of the game. They're getting people in early. They seem pretty coherent with positions and people and stuff. And I can't remember a transfer window where Rangers really did feel like they had their house in order as much. So I just wanted to say both of those things and then hear what you guys say.
I don't know an awful lot about them, Quinny, I'll be honest. I don't know an awful lot to really comment from. I know the Tillman thing's a big blow for sure. I've seen that today. That's a massive blow because he was actually very good. But the Sam Lammers thing is a weird one. I don't really... Yeah, he obviously when you play in better teams or worse teams, it affects your performance, and he's not really had the best circumstances in the last 5 years of his career to succeed as a striker. But I don't really know why they're taking that risk. There's so many other options that are far less risky than that. So it seems quite strange that they've went that route, to be honest.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is right, Quinny, about getting business and stuff done, but realistically, Kent and Morelos have left, right? And they were players who featured a lot for Rangers. So, yeah, Rangers are bringing in players, and obviously, guys like Raskin, etc., have done okay, and Cantwell gets lots of ridicule, but he does seem to do pretty well, at the very least, against all the other teams in Scotland and all that type of stuff. But I don't think there's nothing there that I really would worry about. And also, I think we need to come back and focus on what we're doing. We were talking earlier about buying guys who, kind of Salzburg approach. Remember when I was younger, there's a PSV approach. PSV were buying Ronaldo and then they were selling Ronaldo to Inter Milan and all that sort of stuff. And they developed this system of, we'll buy the best young players, we'll spend 7 or 8 million, but we'll turn them into these guys that we can sell on, like Benfica. So I think we've got to do is buy the right profile players. We've got to realise that we don't have a big budget. We don't have the hundreds of millions. So if we're going to spend 8 to 10 million on somebody, we've got to spend that on somebody who's got a resale value, and then we do move them on it.
Yeah, and for all the people that play Sorare as well, you just look at the game differently, and you can be more objective about people and see, because you're constantly thinking about their actions on a pitch and what they contribute to the actual game, which is, so it's less about how you feel and more about just the raw reality of their output. And sometimes people can kind of be a bit muddy and just be on a hot streak, and it's going to come back and get them eventually. Or there's people who are just underlying monsters, like on our podcast, Mika Marmol, Arthur Thiat, not Mickey van de Veen really, because he was like an absolute monster. But these types of centre-backs exist, and in Sorare they have these spells where it's not shining through that much and then just exploding. And Mika Marmol, I think Barcelona have a €1 million option on his contract. They're not going to take it because they're in financial ruins, apparently, still, Barcelona. Like Amika Marmol should just be an instant. Just the guy is absolutely phenomenal. And so when you play so rare and you're just constantly looking out for these kind of outliers, just think that's the type of players you want to be seeing at Celtic. It would just be great if we could go after them. Adam Zorgain, Charleroi, I mean, imagine him as our number 8.
Oh,
my God. I mean, imagine what damage Adam Zorgain could do at Celtic.
Tell that first guy's name, sorry.
Marmol.
Mika Marmol plays for PK's FC Andorra. He was our player spotlight on the podcast, but
I remember this guy.
A wee bit shorter, that's going to be an issue. He's not a great big jeweler or anything like that, but I mean, L40 or 58 for a centre back in a second division is absolutely absurd.
He's a young guy as well, isn't he? I mean,
it's all completed passes into the final third, completed passes into the box, just like off the charts, just like, how is this guy doing this compared to the rest? Fiat's another one, very similar profile, but
this team is owned by Gerard Piqué, by the way.
Yeah,
he owns that team.
And the kits are so cool. I've tried to get a hold of a kit, but it's impossible to get one. I think you'd have to go to Andorra or go to Spain and get one.
It's a great shout, mate. Love that.
But yeah,
really got one of my favourites from the podcast.
He's fantastic. Theat's another one, very similar, but Theat's playing for Belgium now, national team. He's absolutely phenomenal.
He'll be priced out of it.
I mean, Mikhail Sadilek of FC20 is another one that springs to mind. Another player that I would love to see at Celtic. Jan Nicholas Beste, the Heidenheim guy, just absolutely ridiculous player. There's so many players in the world that are very gettable for Celtic that would improve our team, and I don't think it would cost. Xavier Mbuyamba, the big 6'7" guy at Voldenham, he's another one, just a completely unique. Yeah. So there's so many players out there, and hopefully we can attract them, and hopefully we can own them in Sorare.
Have you got a shout, McBride, for a player to bring in the summer?
If we signed a goalkeeper, I'd like to see us sign Nick College from Sparta Rotterdam. He was superb. They've actually got quite a few good players. Sparta Rotterdam. The guy plays up front. Van Krooij as well. He had a really insane season. Probably not realistic, but Czerny obviously was brilliant for 20, and I think he might be going to Wolfsburg again. These are guys who would be achievable to sign for Celtic because they're playing for mid-table Dutch teams, and they're either then going to go to PSV or Ajax, or they'll move maybe to the Bundesliga. And I think that we could finance deals like that. If we sign somebody like a Czerny, the players are out there. If you look at Feyenoord, they've went and they've signed Zerouki, so they've lost Kokcu. He's went to Benfica, and they brought in Zerouki, and he's been excellent for 20 all season, and they've just plugged that guy in. The players are there. They definitely are there. Matsuki, he's a good young player in the J League. What I feel about the J League now is with Matoma doing so well in the EPL, and with obviously the success Celtic's had, I think the cat's out of the bag. So I think actually there'll be a step away from that strategy because the Japanese clubs will be wanting to charge more money, and there's more spotlight on that. You've seen even like Hearts signing Oda and stuff like that. So teams are already kind of onto that strategy, I think. So I think you're going to have to maybe just sort of look a wee bit further than just into that market.
There's not many in Japan and in Korea that you would say, could come in at Celtic and really improve the team. But, they've still got that 1-year contract thing. Most players still have just a 1-year contract. So Haruya Fuji of Nagoya could be an excellent addition. I'm not so sure playing out for the back and all that. I don't have anything to any evidence at all actually to tell me that he would be good for doing that. But Fuji's great. Mitsuta, unfortunately, the guy who got the ACL, he was the next guy for me anyway. Mark's always talking about Kaneko, who's just so fast. I've spoken to a few, boys analytics and stuff like that who've, got a really good, excellent handle on just analysing players' data and their profiles and things like that. And I think the second divisions of Europe are definitely something that the kind of the Segunda, the Ligue 2, the Serie B, all these leagues, I think, are places that we can make some serious acquisitions. And it's actually been a really good addition from Sorare to have them, because there's some really quality teams, really fun, interesting teams as well. They're doing some cool stuff.
Like St. Pauli.
No, I've not seen St. Pauli this season. And even
Pauli
like
was pretty good.
Even the Croatian league, there's guys in that Croatian league. Adrian Barisic plays for Osijek, centre back. Another player I could see at Celtic. There's
I'd
just
love us to
so
go shopping
many
in Croatia.
footballers.
There's about 4 or 5 players in Croatia that I'm pretty excited about at the moment. If we got one or two of them, it could be really fun for sure. And that's the thing now, is like we've kind of burned that Japan ploy, as you're saying. So, where do we go next for our kind of like alternative little market that we go and exploit? Because we have been kind of plundering Challenger Euro, as it were, for an eternity. Poland and all these other countries. We're always going in there and buying a top goal scorer and things like that. And most of the time, they don't bloody work out for us anyway. Maybe they work out for somebody else. But yeah, no, it's definitely long overdue. But I think it will be quite interesting because we've still got the translator. We've still got the infrastructure to import people from Asia, if that makes sense. They didn't leave
He's more valuable than he's going to end up being a £7 million transfer soon. Translator. Sky Sports News, Celtic's Japanese translator has moved to Tottenham on an £8 million deal.
Yeah, why not go and get like Joseph Satalo or something? Like, I know like these guys.
I don't think that's happening, man.
Or something, but
no.
Why not?
We're not competing with.
Guardiola's that close to Man City, so I think that means Satalo's that
Yeah.
close to Leipzig or Ajax or whoever.
But why not? Why not aim for it? Like, why not actually aim to go and get these guys? Like, so what?
Good point, actually.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
I'm up for it.
What Zagreb have done is they've signed the guy who's come in from French League 2. I can't remember his name, but he's like 24. They've signed him as a replacement for Satalo. Obviously, they're getting injured. They're getting ready. And I looked him up. I can't remember his name. But his SO5 scores were insane. He came from like Paris FC. So, like, obviously, they've also got a plan. You could go and get somebody like Aruna Sangante from Le Havre. Obviously, they've been promoted, so maybe he doesn't want to leave. You could go and get somebody like Formose Mendy or something from Amiens. Like, go and spend like 6 or 7 million on somebody that would traditionally maybe move up to that league above or whatever. But why not aim to get a Batarina? I mean, you're not going to get them, but at least we should be looking at them and thinking, right, we've got a war chest here. We're going to attract somebody by saying we're in the Champions League. We'll give you a realistic stepping stone to go into the EPL. We'll play you. We'll not sit you in a bench. Go out and get some talent. Even like guys like Ivanišek, playing for Croatia is a good season, and they're talking about him going to Turkey. Why can he not move to Celtic?
I think that's a good point. Until, like, obviously at this point, Sutalo, that's done. I mean, it's the cat's out the bag. It had to do that 2 years ago. Celtic could have had Mickey van de Ven 2 or 3 years ago from Oldham. Like, these players are all out there. We need to find the guys who are going to be that in the next 2 or 3 years. Mika Marmo's going to be that. Fiat's obviously become that. Like, all these guys are all there. Zorgain became it. Like, you can see that they're going to achieve those things, and it's about being in early, accepting the risk, being calm, composed, having some, a vision for how these players are going to fit. And I think that's where sometimes Celtic have really struggled, because there has been a short-term kind of, a guy comes in, he doesn't hit the ground running, all of a sudden it's just about moving him on. And there's not been a long-term solid plan like clubs like Leipzig and Ajax and all these other clubs have. And I'm not saying their plans are perfect. Obviously, the Red Bull empire seems to be crumbling. Their whole kind of philosophy and how you take football by storm is just kind of dying away as clubs have figured out how to nullify it. But I think if we could be a part of that process a little bit quicker, then sure, we could easily attract these guys 2 or 3 years before they're completely out there and, you know, unobtainable.
I'm all about that life for Celtic, right? Totally with you. But listening to you guys talk now and just kind of casting my mind up, I would love to see us spend 20 million, 25 million or whatever and go and get Carter-Vickers, go and get Cherky, go and get a genuine, bona fide wonder kid, like a top shelf guy, and just bring him in. Because Leon are gagging for money. Fenerbahce have put on a stupid release fee. Like Ardagula's 15 million euros.
Yeah.
You know,
You
like,
can
you know,
send me
there's
those
guys out there you could go for, man. Push the boat out.
Well, send those mind-bending drugs to the south side, and I'll take some of them for the next podcast.
No problem, mate. On that note, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. MarkPatrickRare, thanks for joining us when you were here. McGawker, it's been an absolute pleasure, my man.
Are you McGawker now? You're not McBride?
Probably. Well, everybody still call me McBride, so I'll probably just change it back. It's not worked so far, so I'll just change it back.
Just like you, Etienne, or Sean. I don't know what we're calling you now either. Absolute pleasure, mate. Good to see you.
You too, mate. You too, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Take care.
Thanks to everyone that joined us live. Don't forget, there's only about 60 or 70 of you live now. What happened, I don't know if you've noticed this, right? I noticed this because I planned the content and stuff, and this is the end of the video, so I'll do a Sorare Odyssey and say something that I know no one's going to listen to. But what's the other channel called again? 67 Hail Hail. They went live at 7. So I seen there was about 30 of you that left to go and watch them, and I know who that was. YouTube tells me who it was, and I'll remember that. I'm only joking. But hail to all. It's been a great one, guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Take care.
Hail.
Stay out of trouble, everyone.
Sorted.
We're still live.
We're still live.